Hey everybody, I'm Johnny Mack, the host of the Soulful Hunter podcast. Thank you for watching this episode. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button for the Washington Backcountry YouTube channel that powers the Soulful Hunter podcast. If you want to connect with us more at Soulful Hunter, go to Instagram or Facebook at the Soulful Hunter podcast. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter podcast. I am your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I am on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship is conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter podcast. Today, I have just a wonderful individual and someone who I look forward to talking with and talking about every time I get the opportunity to, and that is Chad Ryker. He is the host of the Backcountry Rookies podcast and someone who I have come to get to know through the hunting community and through social media, and just really look forward to this conversation and having him on. I've been wanting to have him on for a long time. He's a hard guy to track down, but ladies and gentlemen, Chad Ryker is joining us here. Chad, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Johnny, thank you very much for having me on. It has been a long time in the making, that's for sure, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity.
Oh man, my pleasure. It is an honor to have you on and to get to share this opportunity to talk. Those of you who do not know Chad's story, we're going to dive into it a little bit about how and why he started Backcountry Rookies podcast. But before that, we're diving into the Soulful Hunter aspect, and that is the healing power of hunting. So through my journey of getting to know Chad and his story and what he does and what he's done, I've really been intrigued by his journey and how he came to start Backcountry Rookies and his passion for hunting. And it all stems around this concept of finding a place in the world that brings reprieve and relief and provides purpose and healing. And we're going to hear a little bit of that from Chad right here. So, Chad, give everybody a little background of what you do, where you're from, and what you are currently up to right now in your life.
Okay. Here we go. It's a long story, man. Are you ready for it?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
We're ready.
So currently, I am a military guy. I've been in the Army for 17 years. I'm an intelligence warrant officer. Prior to that, I did some communication stuff. And then prior to that, I was a combat arms guy. I was a cavalry scout and just a ground pounder out there in the combat zone, right? Had some issues with that, and that sort of eventually evolved into me being an intel warrant officer where I'm at now. But so through the military, right? There's hardships all the time, and we always have hardships. I don't think you'll talk to too many military guys, regardless of their occupation in the military. But there's always hardships, and I have always kind of looked for a way to deal with some of that hardship. I don't know if deal with is the right word, but that's what I'm going to use. So prior to how about this? Let me back up a little bit. And prior to the military, I spent a lot of time in the mountains, and I did a lot of rock climbing, and I did a lot of hiking. And I kind of figured out that the mountains was a really awesome place to be. Powerful in so many different ways. It didn't really, the mountains and the outdoors are kind of funny. It's almost like they give you what you need, right? What it is that you're looking for. If you're looking for that physical exertion, you can find it there. If you're looking for that high spot to sit and soak in the sun and sort of almost meditate, you can find that there too. You can find anything you need to on the mountain. But after several, so I'll fast forward a little bit. After several very difficult years and through some pretty traumatic situations that I dealt with in the military, I was always kind of looking for some place like that, right? And I took myself back to those old rock climbing days, and I figured I needed to be back in the mountains because that's a place where I knew that I could find a safe place. I guess was that a good term? Safe place.
That is a great term.
All right. Well, or a happy place. How about that? Safe place sounds like I don't know. Let's go with happy place. So, but anyway, but oftentimes in the military, it's very difficult to find that because you move around so much, and you struggle to find. Like I always knew, like I enjoyed hunting, right, and I enjoyed the outdoors, but I would move around so much that I would never get really comfortable in an area where I could feel like I could hunt, or I would find great rock climbing places or super good trails to hike. By the time I started to really find all that stuff, or find a community to associate with to find that stuff, it was time to move again, right? 3 years later, you're off somewhere or deployed, right? You end up deployed somewhere. Well, fast forward to sort of current day, and that is a little bit of the reason why I started the Backcountry Rookies, because I was struggling with that education part of how to get into the backcountry, and Backcountry Rookies sort of took that spot. The hunting aspect of it came from, I enjoy hunting. I've always enjoyed hunting, but I hunt currently, and for about the last 6 or 7 years, I've hunted out in West Texas, and that really, it's not backcountry hunting at all. If you've ever hunted in Texas, it's far from backcountry. You usually just drive around in a pickup truck, right? And you kind of, oh, there's a deer over there, a couple hundred yards, shoot that deer. And you shoot the deer, and then you drive the truck over, and you pick it up and
put it in the back of the truck.
Yeah, put it in the back of the truck.
Right.
So although it's putting meat in the freezer, right, it's not, there's no adventure to it. And that, I think, is what I was really, really lacking, was that adventure. Especially coming from the combat arms background that I had, I was constantly in the middle of some sort of adventure, whether it be training, and that training would be going into a small built-up village and clearing houses and, fighting in combat situations, to doing all that kind of stuff in the real world. Or it may be some driver's program where we're taking out tracked vehicles and tanks and things, and we're driving out through the woods. There was always something awesome. And then I gave that up, and I moved into the intel world. It's although the intel world's pretty awesome, it's a different kind of awesome, right? It's awesome from behind a desk. And
right.
I missed a lot of that action and that adventure. So Backcountry Rookies sort of evolved because I was looking for that adventure, and I really wanted to tie it into a good quality hunt,
Yeah. It's funny that you talk about rock climbing being one of the things that you did that provided the adventure in your life. And I actually, when I was on an episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast with Bo Martonic, and I shared with him that, like, there's one of the few things in life that provides the adrenaline rush and adventure, and one of them's joining the military, and the other is rock climbing, because you put yourself at risk, even though it's relatively safe or measured. You're knowing what you're getting into. You're putting yourself in a position where you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, constantly. And rock climbing was super. I loved rock climbing. I absolutely loved it. And I love the military too. Ridiculous. So maybe you're onto something there. Maybe all rock climbers should join the military.
I'm telling you, I saw Black Hawk Down when I was in high school. I was like, I want to be Army Ranger. I want to jump out of helicopters, be surrounded. At that time, I was rock climbing. It must go hand in hand.
It must, dude, because literally, Black Hawk Down is why I'm in the Army today.
Yes.
Actually, so I can't remember exactly when Black Hawk Down came out, but so September 11th happened, right? September 11th, 2001.
Right.
September 12th, I was standing in a recruiter station saying, I took that day off of work, and I walked into the recruiter station September 12th, and I said, what are we going to do about this? I need to be doing something about this. This is a big deal. And I started my my application process for the Army on September 12th.
See, more
So
people need to be like you, Chad. More people need to hear stuff like this. Is like you're willing to sacrifice it all for your country and for what you believe and stand for. It's huge.
yeah, there was some patriotism there for sure. And honestly, man, I don't know where that came from or why it happened. That that situation. I mean, I could probably go on and on about it, but I was at work that night, and or it happened that morning, September 11th, and I had to work that night, and I took a half a night off, and I went home, and I sat at home, and I'll be honest, I sat there and I had 4 or 5 beers, and I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Like I'm watching it on the news, and you're just it's like 12 or 15 hours later, you're still seeing the aftermath of what happened. And at that point, they're doing the President Bush's speech, and they're just going through all of this stuff, and it just had a big impact on me, man. And I knew the next day that what I wanted to do, and I walked in and joined. So, and then it was later, as I was trying to sort through and find out what job I wanted, that Black Hawk Down came out, and I was the same way. Like, I want to be a Ranger, man. I want to jump out of Blackhawks. But my recruiter duped me and showed me some crazy video about Cab Scouts being awesome instead, and I ended up being a cavalry scout, which was nothing like being a Ranger, to be honest with you.
Well, that's all right. That last scene where he's like, "Why do you do it, man? Why? You some type of hero?"
Yeah.
And be like, "They don't understand. They'll never get it."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the call is within the heart and the soul.
It is, man, and I'm proud every single day that I've been in the Army. Unfortunately, my time is coming to an end, man, and I'm getting out early. For people that listen to my podcast, I announced on a show about 4 or 5 months ago that I was going to Afghanistan, and I was going to kind of put all the podcasts in. My partner Jordan Whitlow, he was gonna take over the podcast, and I was gonna kind of run it from the sidelines in Afghanistan. I got injured pretty bad. It's an old injury that I've dealt with for many years. I've been blown up a couple times. I've been shot, and it's just one of them things that's haunted me for about 12 years now. And it finally came to a head. The right doctor got a hold of me at the right time in the Army and said that was it, and they called it quits. So I'm retiring medically from the Army here in the next few months, and we'll see. I mean, I did 17 pretty awesome years that I will never ever complain about. Well, I could complain about them for sure, but in the big picture, of it, I could look at.
Well, thanks for your service.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I wouldn't change a single day. Well, there's a couple I would change, but.
Right. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this. You've been in the thick of it a few times. This is something that you don't share with people very often or very much at all. But you've been injured in different situations while you've been in the military. What type of PTSD or what type of effects do you have that are constantly hanging over your head or in the back of your mind, or something that you deal with in everyday life moving forward?
Yeah, so I don't have it as bad as some. I think I'm super resilient. I'm a very resilient person, and I'm able to snap back from most anything. There's a lot of things, man. You lose buddies, and that's something. It's not necessarily a day-by-day haunting, but there's a memory that you'll see something that'll remind you of a person, and you go back and you think about that person, and that's kind of tough. There's a lot of movies that I won't watch anymore. Like I probably wouldn't watch Black Hawk Down anymore. There's too much realism to stuff like that after being in that exact very similar situations to go back and watch movies that are like that. Especially like I can go watch some of the old Vietnam stuff, where guys are like fighting in the woods and things like that. But when it comes to watching some of these modern movies that are fought, in the streets of Iraq or the streets of Afghanistan, that's too real for me, and I just won't even do it. So
wow,
yeah,
that's pretty powerful, man.
Yeah.
So tell me about this. You've always hunted, but you love the mountains. So like, what has hunting been able to do for you moving forward?
All right, that's an awesome question. I have gotten to, so in the last few years that I've been doing this backcountry hunting, I I don't know. There's something about it to where even if you're hunting with a, there's something about the solitude of it that I really enjoy. Right, it gives me time to
Hmm.
think. It gives me time for peace. It gives me just there's a lot of um, it's just a lot of good time to think. And even if you're hunting with a partner, there's still solitude, right? Because you and your partner, it's not like
Yep.
you're talking, right? You're walking and somebody's maybe, you know, piping off some bugles or a mew or something like that. But there's not really any talking. It's still just sort of your own. It's your own
Yeah.
adventure, right? All by yourself. And then you go
Yep.
back to camp.
Absolutely.
You go back to camp at nighttime, and you kind of. I enjoy that too because I really enjoy that camaraderie, which is another thing that I've built up throughout my years in the army. And so it's really to me this that whole hunting experience is great because I have that solitude during the day and I can put my mind at ease, and then at nighttime I go back and talk with the guys around the campfire or whatever. It's just I enjoy it. I really do.
Yeah, it's like the best of both worlds. You get so much reflection time and that individual growth time, but yet you don't have to feel alone and isolated in a negative way because you have people that are going to get your back or they're going to share that experience with you. This is where like the term empathy is going to come into play because people are going to know what you're going through when you're in the suck and the struggle out in the mountains.
Hmm. Yeah,
Eh,
I agree. I
eh,
totally agree.
Yeah.
There's just it's a pretty powerful thing, and I think that I'm glad you invited me on to do this podcast, or anybody for that matter. I mean, I'm glad that I get to talk about it. I like to talk. That's why I have my own podcast, right? But I mean, there's so many other people out there that are certainly have been in far worse situations than me that could talk about it. But that's my perspective, man. Is like you said, there's a perfect balance there to where you have the best of both worlds.
Yeah. It's the healing power of nature. You get out into the wilderness, you get to search your soul, but yet you get to soothe your soul at the
Hmm.
same time. And all the stress and the worries of what's been going on in the past or wherever you've been in this world disappear. All you have to worry about is what your next meal is, where you're going to put your head down, and, if you get to see an animal or not. But truly, it's just being at peace and connecting with nature without any other distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so I think people say that a lot. Oh, I don't care if I kill an animal, right? I'm going hunting this year and I don't care if I kill an animal. And I often kind of wonder how much authenticity is behind that statement. But and maybe it is authentic in most ways because I'll tell you it's authentic when I say it because last year was our first year elk hunt. It was my first year elk hunting, and I truly didn't care if I came home with an animal or with an elk. I would have been more than happy. I was really out there to enjoy that time and to be a part of it. I just wanted to get out there with it and be in those mountains and hang out. And like I said, if I brought one home, it would have been even better. But it wasn't about that. And last year, I got to connect with a really good friend of mine from back home who was a roommate of mine and probably my best friend before I joined the army. And he came out and met us out in Colorado for the hunt. So to me, that meant more to me than killing an elk or doing anything like that. It was just, being hanging out with my buddy Neil and being a part of that. So
So true.
yeah.
I was talking to one of my neighbors recently about why hunt and why get out in the wilderness and why test your fortitude as a human being and to see what you're made of and see what you can handle and push your body to the limits. And you could tell that as I was talking to this guy about all this, he was like, "Oh man, I want that. I want that." But in his head, he justified to him, he's like, "Well, I like to chop wood." And I'm not trying to rip on him at all. So especially if my neighbor hears this episode, but the concept is, yeah, chopping wood, there's something beautiful in that you're putting your body through this physical limit, and it's exhausting, and it's something that seems like it's never going to end, but when you're done with it, you're extremely proud of what you've done, and there's a beauty in that. But just like what he's doing with chopping wood, it's like, dude, you go put yourself in the mountains or out in the wilderness and chop wood and do all this other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Your mind is gonna be opened and truly gonna be able to like experience the world for what it is and get outside of this small little bubble in which we live.
Yeah. Everybody's got a different bubble, though. There's people,
Yeah.
even even in the hunting industry, there's people that'll climb to 13,000 feet to hunt a high country mule deer, and they walk past 100 mule deer to get up there to that high country, just because I think it's because they just want to feel that pain and that sense of adventure, right? They want to
Yeah.
see if they can climb, if they can do that. They want to see if they can accomplish that. So maybe your neighbor just wants to chop like 200 pieces of wood, and that's all he needs, man, for accomplishment.
I'm gonna cut down some trees and be like, hey, come chop my wood.
Yeah, right. There you go, man. I need some.
No, I totally get it.
Go wild.
So
Yeah.
this coming March, I am putting myself through something I've never done before. So I'm not a runner, but running is something that truly tests your fortitude because it takes a lot of effort and mental strength to get your body to move over a long distance. And so I've ran one marathon in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the Portland Marathon 2 years ago. And when I got done, I was like, dude, that wasn't that hard. And I really expected like this idea of a marathon to be extremely difficult, but it was 2 months prior that I packed out a bear solo 9 miles out of the Cascade Mountains, and that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And so going into this marathon, I was like, oh, dude, this marathon's gonna be so tough. So this spring, I'm actually signing up for a 100-mile ultra marathon race because I want to know what hard is. I want to see what my body can do. And I think a lot of this has to do with what you said about guys passing all these deer to go all the way to the top of a mountain to shoot one, is because us within humans, and I can speak specifically for men, is like you want to know how deep you can dig. You want to know where your grit comes from and how hard it is to go into the wilderness and do something that into the unknown. You
Yep.
know,
Oh,
like, do you
I
ever get
totally
any of
agree.
that feeling in the military?
Oh, without a doubt, man. Every day, I could every, all the time, man. I know there's been days where I've stood in front of a doorway in Baghdad, Iraq, ready to breach that door, knowing that there's something on the other side that could potentially end up very, very bad, and you still go
Yeah,
through that door, right? And
yeah,
that's some of the things. Like I can tell you that I have put myself through some situations that I would never in a million years think that I would have done that 18 years ago before I joined the Army. There's no way I would have thought I would have been in those situations. But that's why we train, right? And I trained on that particular situation. I can't tell you how many times where we trained on it, and there was a person in the room at different angles, and they were taking different shots. Maybe they didn't have a rifle and they weren't a target. And you train and you train and you train until you get it right. And that way, real time, when it's happening in Baghdad, Iraq, you get it right. And that's what, so we train to get into the mountain, right? You don't, I didn't just get up off my couch and say, yep, I'm going to Colorado and I'm going to climb to 11,000 feet and I'm going to try to find an elk. I worked at that. And you're not going to run 100 miles without a very, very strenuous training plan. I can only imagine, right? You're going to train and
right.
train and train until you get it right.
I heard a funny saying recently. Someone was like, dude, you're gonna run 100 miles? And the person was like, yeah, no crap. I had to run 1,000 miles just so I could do this race.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say earlier when you were talking about the marathon not being as hard as you thought it was going to be. So I ran one several years ago now, And I was the same way. The hardest part of that marathon was, well, first off, committing to it and saying, I'm going to run a marathon, right? And then I had to register for one to make myself, like, I had to spend a bunch of money to say, okay, all right, I got some money invested in this, so now I'm going to train for it. But the hardest part was probably like that first 10 milers, or maybe that first 6 miler that I did, to break through that wall, or that first real, that first real barrier, to get through that one. And then it was like, oh, well, whatever. What are you doing on Saturday? Well, I've got a 13 miler planned. What are you doing Sunday then? Your buddy's asking you, you want to go grab some beers or something. What are you doing Saturday? 10 miles. What are you doing Sunday? 12 miles. So,
and they just look at you with their jaw open and they're like, are you crazy?
Exactly. They're like, dude, it's the Giants Cowboys game. We're drinking beer at Buffalo Wild Wings. What are you doing? I'm going to go running.
I'll run there.
Yeah. See you guys there. So, and honestly, I think that was the hardest part of that marathon. Now, the marathon itself is difficult, of course.
To an extent.
I mean, it's a physical barrier that you have to be able to bust through. And I think anybody's capable, right? Anybody's capable of accomplishing it. There's just there's a barrier. I like that word. Your neighbor, I bet you inside, I bet you that dude really wants to try to get outside into the mountains, but there's some sort of barrier that's keeping him from doing that. So instead, he sits at home and cuts wood. I could drive around in a pickup truck and shoot big mule deer from a pickup truck and throw them in the back and bring them home. There was something there that I needed that, I had to finally realize before I made it.
You just said something that I would love to put in quotes and put it on a wall in a gym or whatever. But you said anyone can do it. There's a barrier to entrance, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly feel, this is why I think I find a lot of commonalities between running long distances and hunting in the backcountry, is this idea that the only barrier you have is your mind. And there's these barrier of entrances to get in, like fighting over your own mind, or in hunting, like maybe the gear or knowledge of how to hunt. But ultimately, if you want to hunt, or if you want to run a marathon, then it's just the decision to say, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to become a hunter. I'm going to become someone who can run a marathon. Less than 1% of Americans run a marathon ever in their lifetime.
Man, where's that put me? Because only 1% of America joins the military. And I've done both.
Oh, man. Wow.
I'm a superhuman.
And here's the thing. It's like going back to your running training and stuff like that. When I was training for my marathon, the race was, for those of you who don't know what a marathon length is 26.2 miles. The farthest I ran in preparation for that race was 18 miles. And when I ran 18 miles and finished, I was like, oh, well, that wasn't that hard. To now, if it's not 7 miles, I don't really feel like I got a sweat in, or I didn't really feel like I made progress in my fitness levels. And it makes everything else so much more minute and easy and overcomable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And I think this is where you and I, doing our podcasts, reaching out on social medias, putting out content, we are trying to help people overcome barriers and to get out of their head and to get into the real world.
Absolutely, man. And that's why. So I'm going to take a twist here. How about that? I want to transition a little bit to the Backcountry Rookies, because that was the whole idea behind the Backcountry Rookies, right? So a lot of people, I don't know why a lot of people, I'm not going to come up with the idea why people start their podcasts. I started mine because I didn't know how to get involved in backcountry hunting. I didn't know what public land was. I didn't know any of that. And this is just a couple of years ago. The fire that lit all of that was actually Randy Newberg. And I was deployed into Central America, and I was held up. I was not held up, but I was in a hotel down in Central America, and I luckily had some Wi-Fi, and I was at the time I was a long range shooter, or I did a bunch of long range shooting, and I built some custom rifles and done some stuff with rifles, and somehow through the wormholes of YouTube, my computer landed on Randy Newberg video, and it was the one of the many where Randy Newberg is talking about, it's kind of one of those ones where he like looks at the camera and he starts talking about public land and what it means, and how to utilize public land. And that right there was the fire that lit it. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And you hear that story all the time, right? Like, oh my God, I thought I had to have a guide and all this other stuff, and this elk hunt was going to be like $10,000, and it's not. And so that's what started it. Well, that's what, like I said, kind of lit that fuse. And then after that deployment, I came home and I really started digging into it, and I realized I don't know what I'm doing. And I had just been introduced to what a podcast was. And my buddy at the time was like, well, we could start a hunting podcast. And I just started putting it all together, I put together all that, came up with the name, Backcountry Rookies. And it's just kind of stuck. And it's stuck as we don't really know what we're doing. And people always tell me, well, what are you going to do in like 10 years when you're not a rookie hunter anymore? And I always say that it wasn't really designed although I was a rookie, it still am. It wasn't designed around that. It was designed to help myself and all of the other people that are rookies, So it doesn't matter in 10 years, 20 years from now, I still want the Backcountry Rookies, which who knows where it'll be at that point in time. But I want it to be for those people who don't know what public land is, right? And they want to check it out, and they want to understand how to use it and how to get out there and be involved in it. And that's kind of what we're pushing toward.
Yeah, I had no idea what public lands was, and I was a public land user, and I worked at REI.
Yeah.
Like this concept of what public land is when it specifically comes to hunting.
Mm-hmm. Well, right.
Is a disconnect somewhere in society.
Right. You're absolutely correct. And that's why every day I'm thankful. Now, of course I say every day, but I mean present tense. I'm thankful that we have people like Randy Newberg and Johnny Mack and the Soulful Hunter podcast out there to advocate for that and to talk about public land and how we're able to utilize it and how we can utilize it as hunters. And then even on top of that, I'm thankful that we have things like Onyx Hunt, the mapping system that tells you exactly where your public land boundaries are, because that's something that is very easily confused, and you don't ever want to end up in the wrong spot and be in one of the wrong spots where you think you're utilizing public land and you're not. So,
absolutely.
So we have.
And what's funny?
Go ahead, John, please.
Oh, I was going to say, it's like Onyx is doing such a good job, and they are so impressive with what they do that even people who don't hunt know Onyx. My real estate agent uses Onyx all the time for property boundaries.
Yeah.
The guy who I took out hunting last year, who was brand new, once I introduced him to Onyx, he started using it in his business to find landowner information so he could start selling them windows. I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
I know police departments use it, so they know. Well, like I know of some police departments that use it, especially out here in Texas, because some of this land out here is, heck, some of these ranches out in West Texas are bigger than some of the public lands that we have in some of the western states. Some of those ranches are like 100,000 acres, and those police, they use that mapping system so that they know what property boundaries they're on, and who owns that ranch. So when they find some illegals or somebody coming across the border, they know who to contact, and they know what ranch to tell them that, whatever. It's just, I think it's a great system. Anyway.
And not make this advertisement for Onyx, which I love Onyx, you love Onyx, without question. It has come in handy multiple times. Like, I have come across where a trail is on Onyx in the deep backcountry of Washington, and I, to the T, found that trail and was able to hike it out. And in some thick bush over on the Western Washington. There's a super old trail, and I found it, and it got me into some pretty good game trails and some good action over here. So, like, I highly recommend it. And if you don't know how to use it, reach out to Chad, reach out to me, reach out to Onyx, and there's guys who will explain how to use it. So,
yeah, absolutely.
That's my 2 cents right there.
Absolutely. I agree.
So, man, where do we go from here? That's
I don't know, man. You took me down a deep hole back there.
Oh, dude, I tell you, you know what's funny is when you were talking about the wormholes of YouTube, ain't that the truth?
Oh man, you can get pretty lost.
You could spend hours on YouTube, just like one video to the next. All of a sudden, you're looking at something that you're not sure if that really applies to what you're looking at.
But you can't look away from it, so you got to keep watching.
Right, you're like, where am I?
See what's next? Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So let's kind of bring it a little bit back into all of it. You find purpose, passion, and a reward in the mountains when you're hunting. It helps
definitely.
you get some peace in your life and reprieve. What do you feel like being an ambassador for hunting, Chad? What would you say to people who have never experienced the backcountry and what it can do for them?
Man, I think you just got to tell them to go out and try it, right? I think that the fact that just listening to shows like this and having people hear things like how it affects me and how I'm able to find that peace or that camaraderie, whichever one it is that I'm looking for, it's out there and you can always find it. I don't necessarily think that people always need to start with hunting either, right? Just to find backcountry if you want to. I'm doing air quotes here, quoting backcountry, but you didn't start out in, full sick of gear running around hunting, No. But you were in the backcountry and you knew what the backcountry could do for you just because you were able to get out there in it. And I think there's a lot to do with it. Like I was mentioning, where when I came up rock climbing or even just hiking, I was always in the woods. When I grew up, we had a little, I don't know how many acres it was, but there's maybe 50 or 60 acres of woods behind my house. This is Indiana, by the way. So 50 or 60 acres, that's like a big spot of woods.
Yeah.
But me and my brother, little kids, we'd run around that woods and use it for everything you could imagine. From playing army to war to...
Can you hear my kid crying in the background? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you hear this?
Now I can, yeah.
I love it. All you listeners out there, this is real life. We're not editing this out. We're keeping this in because this is beautiful.
It's probably crying.
Sorry,
at my
Chad.
voice.
Get back to that backcountry of Indiana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That deep, dark backcountry of Indiana. But yeah, so, it's just out there to be used. And I think people that haven't used it, they just haven't tried to get out and experience it. It's not, and you can flip that coin almost, and you can find somebody that's from the country and ask them about, have you ever been to the city? And they're going to say the same thing. Oh no, man, I'm not going to the city. What would I do in the city? Like what does that have for me? That has nothing for me. And then you take them to the city and they can't believe it, right? They get to go to Cheesecake Factory for the first time. And they're just mind blown at some of the opportunities that they have. And I think you could reverse those roles with the backcountry. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
I bet you didn't think when I came on that I would be talking about the Cheesecake Factory.
Dude, I totally get it, because wait till what I say right now, and we're going to talk about plates. So
bring it up.
I went through I went through a leadership conference this last winter, and the concept of what this conference was all about was to put so much onto your plate so that it stretches, and when it stretches, they add more to your plate, and it stretches, and by the time you're done with the conference and the leadership training, you have a plate so large that you feel like you can manage all sorts of different things. And the concept of stretching is very important in life. And we're not just talking about physically stretching hamstrings and all that, but the concept of like someone from the country can learn a lot from the city. and a person from the city can learn a lot from the country and learn a lot from the mountains. And it's this idea, we'll talk politics for a second, is knowing where other people come from.
Yeah.
Rather than just shutting something down. Be like, I mean, you can disagree with something, but this goes back to like actually having a perspective on it rather than just like an opinion. It's like you have been in their shoes, or you can experience that, or you have actual knowledge to draw from for facts that you speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
So,
good point. Who knows? What are we even doing here, Chad?
I don't know, man. Talking about
We're living
and Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
Go ahead.
Oh, dude, see, look at us. We're two podcast hosts that like to talk, so we're cutting each other off all the time.
That's all right.
You go ahead. You're my guest.
All right. I was going to talk about the stretching of the plate and just how that is so common now, where we try to put so much on our plate that we think we can manage. And oftentimes, I don't know that we always can.
Yeah.
I see that a lot. I see it all the time, where we just want to add more and more and more.
One of the thing is that the leadership conference taught me a lot about asking for help.
Okay.
And you're right. We can't do everything on our own, even though when we keep piling things on the plate, but to advocate for ourselves. And this goes into learning something new. Like, you don't know how to hunt, advocate for yourself. Reach out to people, to Backcountry Rookies, to Washington Backcountry, to the Soulful Hunter podcast, because there's people that are willing to give you the information and to help you. But if you never advocate for yourself, you're never going to get the answers.
Right, and they're out there. There's so many people in this hunting community. I have found some of the greatest people that I've ever met in my life, and I know I've never shook hands with these people, but I've talked to you, for example, right? I can't tell you how many times that we've had awesome conversations on the phone, and we've talked about hunting, and we've talked about just life in general, and we've never shook hands, but you become a friend over time. But it goes to the same when you're looking for a mentor, because mentorship is conservation, right?
Preacher, brother.
Yeah. So, when you're out there, when you're looking for a mentor, there's so many people that are out there that are willing to help, that I think it's just incredible. And there's, I don't even know how many hunting podcasts are out there that can provide information. And as I was starting to learn stuff, it's the same way I find guests and people to come on the show. I find people that are interesting to me, and they're doing something that I like currently in the industry, and I reach out to them through social media or email or whatever it is, and I say, hey, I've got some questions for you. I have a different platform, and you do too, where you can say, I would like to record those questions, and we provide it to people. But it doesn't mean that just the average guy who doesn't, if you don't have a podcast, it doesn't mean you can't reach out to people and ask all the questions that you want. We field them constantly. We always have questions that come in on our Instagram page. And I always find it where I'm always kind of curious with why people are reaching out to the guys that call themselves the rookies, right? But we do have a pretty solid team of guys that really do know what we're doing. I might not know exactly what I'm doing in the backcountry, but I know a lot of stuff about archery, and I know a lot of stuff about rifles, and I know a lot of stuff about reloading, right? And then we've got other guys that I've put together that kind of are team members, and those guys have been doing backcountry hunting for a long time, and they provide us with a lot of that information also. And so I just think it's important for people not to get so concerned with not knowing, and just reach out and ask those questions.
Yeah. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Have some courage. Fight for what you want.
Yeah.
In this world, I have learned that if you want something, and when I mean want something, like you truly want something, you always get it. You always get what you want. Because if it takes more work to get it, but you want it bad enough, you're going to put in the work to get it, and that's just how life works.
Yep. Absolutely.
So even to the point where you, Chad, shooting a big old bull elk out of Colorado, you want it bad enough, it's going to happen because you're going to stay after it until it does.
Or until the season ends and you have to go home.
And then there's the following year.
And then there's the next year. And that's the way it's going to be. So we went through that this year where after I got hurt, I wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to go hunting or not. But I knew that, Jordan was going to be out there, and I knew Gus was going to be hunting, and Jeremy and Bear and Kyle and all, they were all going to be out there hunting. So I wasn't too worried about that part. That I knew that guys on the team were going to be hunting, but it was frustrating to me because I felt last year I did, I say I didn't want to come home with something, and it really didn't matter one way or another to me, but I still have an adventure that I'm trying to fill, and I will get out there. This year I'm going back. Archery is my favorite time. That's what I love to do the most is archery, and I wasn't able to get out there. So I'm going for rifle, and I'll be out there for rifle season. I found a way, like Johnny's saying. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer to finding a way, but I found a way to make it work, and I'm going to be out there for rifle season. I'll be hunting all second rifle, and I can't wait.
Yeah. Of course, you found a way because you wanted it bad enough.
Yep, absolutely.
All you listeners out there, we plan to keep this podcast episode to 20 minutes, and look what's happening already.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, okay.
We talked for a half hour before we even hit record.
Right. I knew my wife was like, "Oh, you're recording. Who are you recording with again?" And I said, "I'm with Johnny Mac," and she was like, "I'm going to bed." I said, "Okay, it's probably going to be a while." So she's heard her conversations before, yeah.
We're going to have to record this with headlamps on just to burn the midnight oil.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. So, Chad, what's next? What do you got going on this coming season? What's the next steps with Backcountry Rookies? And talk to us about what's happening.
Man, so we've got a lot of stuff going on. The Backcountry Rookies was far exceeded my expectations. Right, I had no idea when I started it that it was going to do well, and I think it's doing well. Like I figured I would get 10 podcast downloads or something, and it's doing way better than that. And I never thought I would be over 5,000. Well, I don't even know what I'm at on Instagram, 6,000-ish. And it's just doing really good. So with growth comes some changes. So we've got, we're going to redesign our website next year. And we're going to add a store because we've dabbled in selling some stuff. But I really want to put an online store up to where we can actually have something where people can go and purchase stuff and have it shipped right away. Because in the past, we've just always made some shirts and sold them like that, And so we're going to build that store and that kind of stuff. We're going to hunt a lot next year. All the guys are out hunting. This year, we've got a lot of hunts going on. That's probably more important than building a store and all that stuff. But Gus has already been out. He's already put a huge black bear on the ground. He got a nice elk a couple weeks ago. Jordan is pronghorn hunting on Saturday. He'll be out for the weekend pronghorn hunting. And then that rolls in. He's got a first rifle elk tag, so he rolls right into that. And then I'm going out for second rifle. Jeremy was out with Billy Hackworth from Switching Camo. And they killed a huge 6x6 bull that was awesome out in the way deep in Idaho. And then Bear and Kyle are over in Montana. They're out hunting pretty hard too. Neither one of those guys have come up with anything yet. They've had some pretty bad weather that's kind of kept them down. But following the elk hunt this year, I'm going on an aoudad sheep hunt on my way home. So I'll basically leave Colorado and I'm swinging through West Texas. I'm going to spend about 3 or 4 days out there and hunt Barbary sheep, aoudad sheep, whatever you want to call it. And then we'll see from there, man. I don't want to plan out too far. Anyway.
Good things come to those who put in the work, and you're putting in work for sure.
Yeah, I try, man. I try. And that's it, man. We put in a lot of hard work on on the podcast. Something new for the podcast that we've got going on this year. I'm getting ready to launch a new series. So it's still a Backcountry Rookies podcast, but it's a series that's called Stories from the Season. And it's actually just, we're having on some friends and previous guests who have had successful seasons, or maybe not even successful. Just, at the end of every podcast, you always hear that statement of, like you just asked me, right? Hey man, what do you got? What kind of hunts you going on? And you don't ever really get the follow up from that. So I'm bringing on some of the previous guests, and we're going to do follow ups, and we're going to hear about some of these hunts. I'm really excited about it. It's a short, quick, little 20 to 30-minute podcast, just wrapping up just the hunt. None of that extra stuff around the fringes or on the edges. It's just going to be about the hunt. So we're excited to release that. We've got our hunting story giveaway going on right now, which is killer. I'm super excited. We did it last year, and we had a really good prize package. And this year, we've doubled it, and we've got awesome prize packages.
I know. I'm super bummed because I really thought I was going to win that backcountry rifle one.
Last year or this year?
Last year,
yeah.
When I put in with my black bear hunt story,
yeah,
I was like, "Oh, I got this in the bag."
Yeah, we get so many though. We get a lot of stories, and this year we're getting even more. And this year we're giving away a new bow. It's Prime Logic CT 3, 5, or 9, whichever the person wants. It's new, and that's equipped, loaded out with HHA and rests and sight, tight spot quiver, pair of Vortex Viper HD binos, Good Bull.
The works. Yeah. You're just hooking them up with everything.
Totally hooking them up. Good Bull Outdoors, who we've gotten to build a really, really good relationship with Good Bull over this last year. If you're not familiar with Good Bull Outdoors, check them out on social media. And they're just awesome photographers. And they're giving away a big print, a real nice 16 by 20 print of whatever the winner chooses. They can choose whatever picture they want. And Good Bull's going to mat it up for them and send it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So how can people send in their stories to you for the giveaway? How can people get a hold of you? How can they find you? Lay it out there for us.
Perfect. All the details on the giveaway, I'm just going to tell you, either go to the Instagram page, which is at Backcountry Rookies, and we have a link tree in our bio. Thanks to Johnny Mac. I think you were the first person I saw that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I think you're the first one I saw that had that. And I said, Johnny Mac's got it. I got to have it. So anyway.
Well, I like to keep it fresh.
In the link tree, there's a hunting story giveaway link, and you can go to that, and it takes you to our webpage, which has all of the information on it that you'll need to submit. But basically, you write up your hunting story, Western big game hunting story, and it's a couple pages on Word document, or even in an email. We've been getting them either way, Word docs or emails. Write it up, send it in. Successful or not successful, we've gotten some really good not successful stories that have some lessons learned in it that are just, you're like, holy cow, that's a really good story, So it doesn't have to be a success. Anyway, all the details are on the website, backcountryrookies.com, or go to the Instagram page. And that's how you get.
What about your Facebook group?
Oh yeah, so Facebook group is Backcountry Rookies Nation, and we're pretty proud of that. That thing's getting up over 1,500 members right now. And
a lot of traction.
What's that?
You're getting a lot of traction on that.
Yeah, it's growing. It's growing pretty good. I'm actually very surprised every day. I'm sitting here looking at my computer, and I've got like 4 member requests right there right now that I need to go approve. The Backcountry Rookies Nation we put that together when we started the Backcountry Rookies because we wanted a place where people could go and ask questions and ask rookie questions, as rookie as you want to, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Hey, can I go out in flip-flops and a tank top and hunt elk if I want to? You'll get an answer, right? And the whole idea behind it is that you're not going to get a bunch of answers. Like, nobody's going to try to downgrade you or make you feel bad. People are going to answer and say, well, maybe not be the best idea. You could probably get it done, right? You're going to kill an elk, but the pack out's really going to suck. So,
right.
no judgment. And that's what we try to do. And when I approve requests, man, we go through and we sort those out. And I've declined a lot of people, several people that have requested to come in because I didn't really think that they fit what we were looking for. And I've removed several people from that group since because I didn't like the way that they were treating some other people in conversations. So we manage it really, really tightly, and we're proud of that. So, and then the other thing is too, is there's a lot of people that are not rookies that are in there, and it's people that want to mentor younger rookie hunters, or maybe not rookie, maybe first, second, third year, but they still have questions. But there's some really, really good expert hunters in there that are in there answering those questions for you. So it's a really good mix of people. Like I said, we're really, really proud of what we built there on the Rookies Nation. We're proud of everything that we built, man. I'm really happy with the way that we put it together.
It should be.
One thing that I'm super proud of, and I'm going to plug my sponsors, is I'm very, very proud of the sponsors that we have on our show. So I've been approached by a lot of different companies that want to sponsor the show, and I could sell it out, and I could take a bunch of money from a bunch of people and tag people's names all over our podcast, but I won't do that. So the only sponsors that you'll see on the podcast is sponsors that are going to give back. And right now we're sponsored by Elk 101's University of Elk Hunting, and we have discount codes for all of these. But University of Elk Hunting, Go Hunt, and Onyx Hunt. So each one of those offers a discount to the listeners of our podcast, and they can go on there and they can get their discounts. But we did that because all of those are educational in some way. University of Elk Hunting is hands down one of the best hunting platforms I've ever seen ever in my, I mean, not that I've been doing this a long time, but just on the way that it teaches you and the educational side of it is so easy to understand. If it wasn't elk hunting and it was something else, learn how to use PowerPoint or something like that. It was just the way that Corey laid that thing out. It's phenomenal. So cool. We have that. Yeah. And we're super, super proud to have that. And then Go Hunt, the power that Go Hunt brings when it comes to trying to figure out what unit that you're using is incredible. And then aside from the insider program, the articles that they write and just all of the information that Go Hunt has is fantastic. And if you're looking for rules and regulations for every state that you want to go hunt, you can find all that stuff on Go Hunt. It's all out there. And then Onyx Hunt, with Johnny and I talked about it earlier, so I won't really beat that one up too much. In my
good job.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think Onyx is one of it's the best mapping system out there for me. There's other ones out there, and I see a lot of people praising some of the other mapping systems, and that's fantastic. Onyx works really, really good for me. I've never had any issues with it, and it always brings me back to camp, right? And it always takes me to where I want it to go, and that's important to me. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So.
You are a stud, Chad. I'm really thankful that you had a chance to hop on tonight and do this episode with me.
Yeah, well,
we should collaborate.
Yeah.
We should collaborate and do a mentored hunt giveaway.
I'm totally down, dude. Totally down. Yeah. We'll have to, there's a lot of specifics that we need to work out there, I think, but I think that we need to work something out. I'm always happy and proud to collaborate with the Soulful Hunter podcast.
That's right. Stay tuned.
Yes.
Chad, thank you so much, man. You are just the man. Thanks for serving our country. Thanks for sharing with us and being vulnerable, and look forward to talking to you again. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.